The story begins with a girl named Miranda Corsette. She was just 16 years old, living in Gulfport, Florida, a small town where everyone knows your name. Miranda wasn't like most teenagers. She was a mom, a young one, raising an 11-month-old baby girl. She lived with her grandmother in a little house near the water, a place that should have felt safe. But for Miranda, life was never simple. Her parents were gone, lost to her years ago, and her grandmother stepped in to raise her. She was all Miranda had left, her and that baby. Miranda's life was tough. She wasn't in school like other kids her age. She was homeschooled, which gave her freedom, but also left her lonely. She struggled with her mind, dark thoughts, wild moods, things she couldn't always control. She'd gotten mixed up with drugs too, a habit that pulled her deeper into trouble. And she had a habit of running away. She'd vanish for a day or two, sometimes longer, leaving her grandmother worried sick. But she always came back. Always, until she didn't. February 2025 started like any other month in Gulfport. The air was warm, the streets quiet. Miranda spent her days juggling motherhood and teenage dreams. She loved her baby. Everyone said so. She'd sit on the porch, rocking her little girl, humming songs she made up. But there was a restlessness in her, a hunger for something more. She wanted friends, adventure, a way out of the weight she carried. That's when she turned to her phone, where, like so many kids, Miranda lived online. She scrolled through apps, chatted with strangers, looking for a spark. She didn't know it yet, but one of those chats would change everything. On Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2025, she logged into a dating app. She wasn't supposed to be there. She was too young. But the rules didn't stop her. That's when she met him. His name was Steven Gress. He was 35, more than twice her age, a man with a smile that hid secrets. To Miranda, he seemed exciting, new, different. They started talking. Gress was smooth, friendly, the kind of guy who knows what to say. He didn't push too hard, not at first. He asked about her day, her baby, her life in Gulfport. Miranda opened up. She told him things she didn't tell anyone else, how she felt trapped, how she wanted more. He listened. He made her feel seen. And then he made his move. "Let's meet," he said. "I'll pick you up." Miranda didn't hesitate. On February 14th, she slipped out of her grandmother's house, her baby asleep in the crib. She climbed into Gress's car, a beat-up sedan that rumbled down the street. He drove her to his duplex in St. Petersburg, just 10 miles away, but a world apart from Gulfport. She spent the day there, hanging out, talking. Nothing seemed wrong. He brought her back that night, dropping her off like it was no big deal. To anyone watching, it was just a teenage outing. But it wasn't. It was the beginning of the end. The next day, February 15th, Miranda made a choice. She went back, she packed a small bag, kissed her baby goodbye, and told her grandmother she'd be home soon. She didn't say where she was going, but her grandmother didn't ask. Miranda had run off before. She'd be fine, right? Except this time she stepped into a trap she couldn't escape. Inside Gress's duplex, things felt different. It wasn't just him there. He lived with a woman named Michelle Brendes, his girlfriend, 37 years old and sharp-edged. The place was small, cluttered, the kind of house where shadows linger. Miranda didn't know it yet, but she'd walked into a place where violence simmered, waiting to explode. For 5 days, she stayed there. 5 days that started normal, but ended in horror. Back in Gulfport, her grandmother waited. She didn't call the police, not yet. Miranda always came back. She'd done this dance before. But as the hours stretched into days, a knot grew in her stomach. Something wasn't right. The baby cried more, like she knew her mom wasn't coming home. The house felt empty, silent. Miranda wasn't a perfect girl. She'd made mistakes, taken risks, chased things she shouldn't have. But she was 16, a kid with a kid of her own, trying to figure out life. She loved purple flowers, her cousin said later. She'd light up when she saw them, picking them from yards when no one was looking. She had dreams, big ones, buried under the weight of her struggles. She deserved a chance to chase them. Instead, she got Steven Gress. On February 20th, everything fell apart. Inside that duplex, a fight broke out. Gress and Brandes turned on Miranda. They accused her of stealing a ring, something small, worthless, but enough to spark their rage. There was no proof, just paranoia. Miranda denied it, but they didn't care. The shouting turned to hitting. The hitting turned to worse. They tied her up. They beat her. And for 4 days, they didn't stop. Miranda was trapped. No phone, no way out. She was 16, scared, alone, begging for it to end. But Gress and Brandes weren't done. On February 24th, they went too far. They forced a billiard ball into her mouth. They wrapped her face in plastic. She couldn't breathe. She fought, but she was weak, broken from days of pain. Slowly, painfully, Miranda Corsette died. What happened next was worse than anyone could imagine. They didn't call the police. They didn't bury her. They grabbed a saw and cut her into pieces. Her body, once full of life, a mom, a dreamer, became trash to them. They stuffed her into bags, loaded her into Gress's car, and drove. They took her to a house in Largo, 20 minutes away, owned by Brandes's mom. There they finished the job, hacking her apart like she was nothing. Then Gress drove to a dumpster in Ruskin, 40 miles south, and dumped her. By the time anyone knew she was gone, her remains were lost, hauled to a landfill and burned. Miranda Corsette was gone. A girl who loved purple flowers, who rocked her baby to sleep, who dreamed of more. She was 16 and her story should have been just beginning. Instead, it ended in a way no one saw coming. But this isn't the end. Not yet. Someone knew what happened. Someone called the police. And soon the truth would come crashing down. Hey, it's Williams from True Crime Intel. Miranda's case is brutal, right? We dive into stories like hers every week. True crimes that shock and demand justice. If this one's got you hooked, smash that like button and subscribe. It keeps her story alive and brings you more. Stay with me. Back in Gulfport, the days dragged on. Miranda Corsette had been gone since February 15, 2025. Her grandmother stared at the empty porch where Miranda used to sit with her baby. The 11-month-old girl fussed more now, like she could feel the hole her mom left behind. It was late February and the quiet was suffocating. Miranda's grandmother didn't call the police right away. She'd been through this before, Miranda running off, disappearing for a few days, then slipping back home like nothing happened. But this time the silence felt different, heavy, wrong. On February 24th, she couldn't wait anymore. Miranda had been gone over a week. No texts, no calls, no sign of her. Her grandmother dialed the Gulfport Police Department. "My granddaughter's missing," she said, her voice shaky. "She's 16. She has a baby here. She's never been gone this long." The officer on the phone took the report, but he didn't sound worried. "She's a runaway," he said. "We see this all the time. She'll turn up." They marked her file and moved on. To them, Miranda was just another troubled teen. No one knew she was already dead, her body cut up, dumped, and burned. For almost 2 weeks, nothing happened. Miranda's file sat on a desk, buried under other cases. Her grandmother waited, checking her phone, pacing the house. Neighbors asked where Miranda was. "She's off somewhere," her grandmother said, forcing a smile. But deep down, she knew. Something was off. The baby's cries echoed through the house, a constant reminder of the girl who wasn't there. Then on March 6th, everything changed. A phone rang at the St. Petersburg Police Department, 10 miles from Gulfport. It was a tipster, someone who knew something. The call was short, but the words hit like a punch. "Miranda Corsette is dead," the voice said. "Steven Gress killed her. He kidnapped her, tortured her, and got rid of her body." The officer scribbled it down fast. "Who are you?" he asked, but the line went dead. No name, no details. Just a bomb dropped into a case no one had even started working yet. The police didn't waste time. That tip lit a fire. They pulled Miranda's missing person report from Gulfport and started digging. Who was Steven Gress? Where was Miranda last seen? Detectives tracked her phone, her social media, anything they could find. Her digital trail led straight to Gress, a 35-year-old man from St. Petersburg with a duplex on 27th Avenue North. The same man she'd met on that dating app. The pieces were falling into place, and they didn't look good. Here's the twist. Gress was already in jail. Not for Miranda, not yet, but for something else. On March 5th, the day before the tip, police had arrested him. It happened at his duplex. Officers got a call about a fight. Loud yelling, threats, chaos. When they showed up, Gress was wild, eyes bloodshot, holding a harpoon. He was pointing it at his girlfriend, Michelle Brandis, screaming at her. The cops tackled him, found drugs in his pockets, and hauled him in. He was charged with aggravated assault, drug possession, and resisting arrest. They locked him up, no bond. At the time, no one connected him to Miranda. But now with the tip, he wasn't just a guy with a temper. He was a suspect in something much worse. Detectives moved fast. On March 6th, they went back to the duplex. It was a small place, run down, with peeling paint and a sagging roof. Inside, it smelled like stale smoke and sweat. They didn't know what they'd find, but they had a bad feeling. The place was a mess. Clothes everywhere, trash piled up, a broken chair in the corner. Then they saw it. Blood. Not a lot, but enough. Dark stains on the floor, smeared like someone tried to clean it up. Signs of a fight. Something bad happened here. They kept searching. In the bedroom, they found ropes, cut, frayed, like they'd been used to tie someone up. In the kitchen, a trash can had plastic wrap crumpled inside, sticky with something dark. Every clue screamed trouble, but Miranda wasn't there. Where was she? The tipster said she was dead, her body gone. The police needed more. They needed to know what Gress did with her. That's when they got another lead. The tipster didn't just name Gress. They mentioned a second person, Michelle Brandis. She lived with Gress, shared that duplex, shared his life. Was she part of this? Detectives pulled her file. Brandis, 37, had no big record, but she'd been around Gress's chaos for years. Neighbors said she was quiet, kept to herself, but she stuck by him no matter what. Now her name was in the mix, and she wasn't at the duplex. She'd vanished after Gress's arrest. The police widened the net. They traced Gress's car, a beat-up sedan he'd been driving for years. Security cameras caught it leaving St. Petersburg on February 24th, the day Miranda's grandmother reported her missing. It headed to Largo, a town 20 minutes away. The house there belonged to Brandis's mom, a quiet place on Mallory Drive. Detectives knocked on the door. No answer. They got a warrant and went in. What they found turned their stomachs. The garage was a crime scene. Blood on the floor, dried and sticky. Tools scattered. A saw, a knife, a hammer. Trash bags in the corner, empty but stained. It didn't take a genius to figure it out. This was where they cut her up. Miranda's body had been here, hacked apart like meat. The evidence was clear, but she was gone. Where did they take her? They followed the trail. Gress's car showed up on another camera, this time in Ruskin, 40 miles south. On February 24th, it pulled up to a dumpster on 14th Avenue Southeast. The footage was grainy, but it was him, tossing bags into the trash. Heavy bags, the kind that don't move easy. By the time police got there, the dumpster was empty. The trash had been picked up, hauled to Hillsborough County's incinerator, and burned. Miranda was lost in a landfill, her body turned to ash. The investigation was racing now, but it wasn't over. Gress was in custody, Brandis was missing, and the police had a mountain of evidence. But no body. Could they prove it? Could they make it stick? And who was the tipster who broke the silence? Someone out there knew the truth, knew what Gress and Brandis did. That call wasn't the end. It was just the start of a fight for justice. The police had a name, Steven Gress, and a crime scene, but no body. Miranda Corsette was gone, her remains burned in a landfill, and the St. Petersburg detectives were scrambling. It was March 6, 2025, and that tipster's call had flipped the case wide open. Gress was already behind bars, locked up from his arrest the day before. But he wasn't charged with murder yet, just assault, drugs, and resisting. The police needed more to tie him to Miranda, and they needed Michelle Brandes. She was out there somewhere, a ghost in the wind. Gress sat in a jail cell, quiet for once, rough around the edges, with a face that looked older than his years. His arrest on March 5th had been messy. Cops bursting into his duplex, finding him waving a harpoon at Brandes like a madman. He'd fought them, yelled, swung at them until they pinned him down. Now he was cuffed, but he wasn't talking. Detectives leaned on him hard. "Where's Miranda Corsette?" they asked. "What did you do?" He stared at the wall, lips shut tight. They had blood, ropes, camera footage, but without a body it was all circumstantial. They needed him to crack. He didn't. Meanwhile, Michelle Brandes was a question mark. She'd been at the duplex when Gress got arrested, but she slipped away after the cops left. No one knew where she went. Evidence said she wasn't just a bystander. She'd been there when Miranda died. She'd helped cut her up, dump her. The police put out a call. "We're looking for Michelle Brandes. She's wanted in a homicide. If you see her, call us." Her face hit the news. TV, online, everywhere. She couldn't hide forever. For 2 days, Brandes was a fugitive. Detectives tracked her phone, talked to her family, checked her mom's house in Largo again. Nothing. They went back to the duplex, tore it apart. More blood, more clues, a billiard ball in a drawer, stained and scratched. It matched the story. Gress and Brandes had shoved it in Miranda's mouth, suffocated her with plastic. It was sickening, cold, the kind of detail that sticks with you. They found trash bags, too, the same kind Gress dumped in Ruskin. The net was tightening, but Brandes was still free. Then on March 8th, she walked in. No chase, no fight, just Michelle Brandes, stepping into the St. Petersburg police station, hands up. "I'm turning myself in," she said. Her voice was flat, her eyes empty. She didn't run because she couldn't, not anymore. The cops cuffed her on the spot. First-degree murder, kidnapping, the same charges Gress faced. She didn't say much, didn't explain, just sat there as they booked her. 2 days on the run, and now she was done. The arrest hit fast, but the case wasn't closed. Gress and Brandes were in custody, but Miranda's body was still missing. Detectives drove to the Ruskin dumpster, empty, just like they'd feared. They called the landfill, talked to the incinerator crew. "Anything from February 24th?" they asked. The answer was grim. "It's gone. Burned up days ago." They sent a team anyway, digging through trash, hoping for a miracle. Nothing. The fire had taken her, left nothing but ash. Without a body, proving murder got harder. But the police weren't giving up. Back in Gulfport, word spread like wildfire. Miranda Corsette wasn't just missing, she was dead. Tortured, cut up, thrown away. The town froze. This wasn't the Gulfport people knew. A sleepy place with boats and sunshine. Now it was a crime scene, a wound. Neighbors whispered about it at the grocery store, the gas station. "She was only 16, they said. "A mom. How could this happen here?" The news hit Miranda's family hardest. Her grandmother collapsed when she heard. She'd raised Miranda, fed her, held her through the tough nights. Now she was gone, and all that was left was her baby, 11 months old, too young to understand. At a flower shop downtown, a little girl walked in, tears streaming. "I need purple flowers," she said. They were Miranda's favorite. The florist hugged her, gave her a bouquet for free. Soon, purple flowers popped up everywhere, on porches, in yards, outside the police station. A local business set up a table with purple arrangements, a sign that read, "For Miranda, leave a note." People did. "Rest easy, sweet girl. We won't forget you. Justice for Miranda." The town painted itself purple, a quiet scream for a girl they'd lost. But not everyone was quiet. Anger bubbled up too. People asked why the police didn't act sooner. "She was a runaway," they'd said. She'll come back. Now she never would. Miranda's cousin blasted them online. They didn't care because of her past, she wrote. She needed help, and they failed her. Others agreed. At the duplex on 27th Avenue North, neighbors stood outside, staring. I never thought he'd do that, one said. He was loud, sure, but this? Another shook her head. That poor girl. What she went through. They'd heard the fights, seen Gress's temper, but no one saw this coming. Now the house was taped off, a ghost of what happened inside. The arrests were a start, but the fight wasn't over. Gress and Brandis were locked up, facing life, or worse if convicted. Detectives kept digging, piecing it together. Blood, tools, footage. It was strong, but no body meant doubt. Could they win in court? And who was that tipster? Someone knew enough to call, to point the finger. Someone out there held the key to locking this case tight. Gulfport mourned, the police pushed, and two killers sat in silence. But this wasn't the end, just the edge of something bigger. Steven Gress and Michelle Brandis were in jail, but the story of Miranda Corsette was far from over. By March 8, 2025, the St. Petersburg police had them both. Gress caught in a violent meltdown, Brandis turning herself in after days on the run. The evidence was piling up. Blood in the duplex, tools in Largo, camera footage of Gress dumping bags in Ruskin. But no body. Miranda's remains were ash in a landfill, and that made everything harder. The police had a case, but the courtroom was another fight. Who were these two people who took a 16-year-old's life? And could justice stick? Steven Gress wasn't a stranger to trouble. At 35, he'd lived a rough life in St. Petersburg, bouncing from job to job, place to place. He was tall, wiry, with a temper that flared fast. Neighbors knew him as the guy who yelled too loud, who'd stumble home late, eyes glassy from drugs. He had a record, petty stuff mostly. Theft, a few fights, nothing big until now. But there was a darkness in him, a need to control. Women in his life didn't stay long, except Michelle Brandis. Gress thrived on power. He'd draw people in, charm them, then flip. Friends said he'd snap over nothing. A spilled drink, a wrong word. That night on March 5th, when police arrested him, showed it clear. He'd pointed a harpoon at Brandis, screaming, high out of his mind. It wasn't the first time cops had been to the duplex. Call logs showed 7 visits in the last year. Fights, noise, chaos. No one thought he'd kill, though. Not until Miranda. She was easy prey for him. Young, lost, looking for someone to listen. He found her on that dating app, reeled her in with smooth words. To her, he was an escape. To him, she was a target. When she stole that ring, or when he thought she did, it wasn't about the jewelry. It was an excuse. He beat her, tied her up, tortured her for days. Then he killed her, cut her up, dumped her, cold, planned. Like she was trash he could toss out. In jail, Gress stayed quiet. Detectives pressed him, what happened to Miranda? But he gave them nothing. He sat there, smirking sometimes like he knew they were stuck without her body. He'd been in cuffs before. He thought he'd slip this too, but the evidence was loud, even if he wasn't. Michelle Brandis was harder to figure out. At 37, she'd been with Gress for years, living in that duplex, taking his storms. She was thin, pale. She didn't have his record, just a few minor run-ins, nothing serious. Neighbors barely noticed her. She kept her head down, one said. Always with him, though. Why did she stay? Was she scared, controlled, or was she just as bad? The police said she wasn't a victim. She was there when Miranda suffered, 4 days of hell, tied up, beaten. Brandis didn't stop it. She helped. When Miranda died, suffocated with that billiard ball in plastic, Brandis didn't run then either. She grabbed a saw with Gress, cut her up, bagged her. She rode with him to Largo, then Ruskin, watching him dump the bags. She was in it, deep. When Gress got arrested on March 5th, she bolted. For 2 days she hid, maybe with friends, maybe alone. The police hunted her, plastered her face everywhere. On March 8th, she walked into the station, no fight left. Did she feel guilty, scared, or just trapped? She didn't talk much either, just sat in her cell, waiting. Some asked if Gress made her do it. Was she a puppet pulled by his strings? Others said no, she chose this. The truth was murky, but the charges weren't. First-degree murder, kidnapping, same as Gress. She wasn't walking away. By March 14, 2025, the legal wheels were turning. Gress and Brandis sat in Pinellas County Jail, no bond, facing life, or the death penalty, if convicted. Prosecutors built their case: blood, DNA, the billiard ball, tools, footage, witnesses too. Someone saw Miranda at the duplex, heard screams. The tipster's call tied it together, though no one knew who they were yet. It was strong. But no body? That was the problem. In court, Gress got a public defender. His first hearing was quick. Judge said no bond, set a date. Brandis, too. They didn't speak, didn't look at each other. The lawyers were ready to fight. No body, no murder, the defense could say. Juries like proof. Bones, flesh, something to see. Prosecutors had to lean on the rest, paint a picture so clear no one could doubt it. Legal experts weighed in. It's tough without remains, one said on the news. Jurors want closure, but the evidence is solid. DNA, video, it might be enough. The trial was months off, but the stakes were high. Miranda's family watched, prayed. Her grandmother clutched her baby, whispering, "We'll get justice." But would they? Without Miranda's body, it was a gamble. The police kept searching the landfill just in case. Dogs, machines, hours in the stink, nothing. "It's gone," a detective said. "Incinerated." They stopped, focused on court instead. The tipster stayed a shadow. Someone close, maybe a friend. Someone who couldn't stay quiet. Their call started this, but could it finish it? Gulfport wasn't the same after Miranda. The purple flowers stayed. On fences, in windows, a silent tribute. People hugged their kids tighter, checked their phones. "She was one of ours," a neighbor said. "We should have seen it." Guilt mixed with grief. At the flower shop, that little girl came back, left more purple blooms. "For Miranda," she said, crying. The story went viral. Twitter lit up. #Justice for Miranda. Protect your kids. News trucks rolled in, cameras everywhere. Women's groups marched, demanded dating apps lock out minors. "She was 16, they shouted. "This can't happen again." Schools held talks, online safety, predators, warning signs. Miranda's name became a rallying cry. Her family broke apart. Her grandmother aged overnight, raising a baby alone. "I should have stopped her," she said, voice cracking. Her cousin, Denian, kept posting, "Don't forget her. She mattered." The baby grew, crawling now, never knowing the mom who loved her. Purple flowers sat by her crib, a piece of Miranda left behind. The duplex stayed empty, yellow tape flapping. Neighbors moved away, couldn't sleep there anymore. "Too many ghosts," one said. Ruskin's dumpster got a spotlight. People left flowers there too, until the town cleaned it up. Miranda's story stuck, a scar on Florida. Miranda Corsette was 16, a mom, a dreamer, a girl who loved purple flowers. She thought she'd found a friend online. Instead, she met monsters. Steven Gress and Michelle Brandes took her life, her future, her baby's mom. They sit in jail now, waiting for a trial that might not heal the pain. Her body's gone, but her story isn't. It's a warning. Watch who you trust, check your kids' phones, speak up if something's wrong. It could save someone. This isn't over. The courtroom will decide, guilty or not, life or death. Miranda's family waits, Gulfport waits, we all wait. She deserved better. She deserved a chance. Hey, it's Williams from True Crime Intel. Miranda's story hit hard, right? If it got to you, hit that like button. It helps us spread her name. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next case. Drop a comment. What do you think? Will justice win? Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Let's keep talking about the victims who matter. Stay safe out there. and I'll see you in the next one.